Let's talk about the WNBA and the league's demise now that Caitlin Clark is no longer going to play this season. The WNBA and the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, Amber Cox, all the way up and including, let's just keep it real, Kathy Engelbert, Adam Silver, the National Basketball Association, everybody that participated in the farce.
The only thing to blame for Caitlin Clark's season ending is the WNBA. Her body continued to malfunction, starting with a quad strain in May and continuing with recurrent groin problems in June and July, followed by a bone bruise in August. It's more than simply a personal tragedy that Clark will miss the remainder of the season. It's a league-wide catastrophe brought on by bad officiating, inadequate communication, and persistent physical abuse of a single player. Disgruntled fans are calling for boycotts, refunds, and answers. At best, the league's answer was silence. How did the league allow the collapse of its biggest star in only 13 games? What is Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's opinion on all of this? If you believe the WNBA is to blame, please let us know in the comment section below.
Come on.
Caitlin Clark, out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the playoffs.
When Clark was pushed into a screen, grabbed by the shirt, or completely knocked off balance, how many times did the referees just look straight ahead and act as though nothing had happened? Fans find that to be the most annoying thing. We all witnessed it live. One possession followed by another. Before she even touched the ball, Clark was being pummeled, coming off a curl, thrown into help defense, and occasionally even double-teamed. Additionally, there were numerous opportunities for the officials to raise the alarm.
They chose to swallow it instead.
Additionally, it developed into a pattern that was later documented by the Washington Post. There was more than one team here being excessively active. A player who quickly rose to prominence as the sport's face was being used by the entire league.
Well, it all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what's going on.
The most valued player in the league, who not only had her own franchise but also half of the WNBA's rating rise, was left hanging.
Consider that.
One athlete should have been handled like the investment she was, filling arenas in Dallas, Las Vegas, New York, and Chicago. Rather, in every other league, referees denied her even the most basic calls stars receive every night, even when networks cut record checks to broadcast her games. We witnessed defensive contact that would have been a foul to anyone else, bodies diving into her off-ball, and hand-checking that prevented her cuts before they even began.
The WNBA and all the people that follow the WNBA and try to promote the WNBA don't understand that Caitlin Clark's game resonates with us. I say this every day, and every day I got to deal with somebody else dumb in the media. Caitlin Clark's game resonates because she's got flair, she's got flash, she's got style. I said this before, and I'll say this again. We saw Sue Bird's game. We saw Diana Taurasi's game. Kim Mulkey was Sue Bird before Sue Bird became Sue Bird. We've seen it. We haven't seen Caitlin Clark.
Watching this was more than just annoying. It was risky. In addition to leaving a player tired, those frequent, low-quality shots build up over weeks, wearing down already strained muscles. There were no mysterious injuries to Clark's groin that burned through June or her quad that stiffened in May. Unprotected landings, twisted pivots from denied space, and repeated strikes. These are the specific causes of stress injuries, which require prolonged rest to fully heal. Because the alternative would have meant empty arenas that fans had already purchased, she was compelled to continue performing throughout it.
And last year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlin Clark Caitlin Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlin Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham. She gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlin Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call common fouls.
For this reason, it is referred to as hypocrisy. The WNBA pleaded for news stories about Caitlin Clark-centered endorsement deals, record ticket sales, and overflowing merchandise orders. However, they wanted to pretend she was just another newbie when it came to the most basic task, which was to safeguard the player who was in possession of those paycheck checks. In actuality, she wasn't. Furthermore, they jeopardized the entire season by allowing her to be beaten night after night, not simply the outcome of the games.
The folks that cover the NBA, different than any WNBA woman ever. And she wins, and she shoots from deep. It's no different than Steph Curry. How many times we got to say?
So, what happens when your golden goose stops playing? What happens if the league doesn't call fouls, and your star ends up limping rather than sprinting around the court? We now know that the referee's carelessness affected more than one box score. It prepared the audience for Caitlin Clark's collapse at the end of the season. Additionally, the criticism that began on the court was short-lived. It got out. From the first preseason practice, was Caitlin Clark's sophomore season doomed? Now it feels that way. In May, return to training camp. There have already been her quad tightened up, which is something most athletes would rest to avoid more harm, according to sources. Rather, she was introduced as the focal point of each practice, event, and marketing campaign. The issue worsened and resulted in a groin injury less than 2 months later. That groin turned into a full-fledged right side tear by July. The announcement that nobody wanted to hear followed. The year was over for Clark. There is more than one time in the tale of how we got there. She never had a chance because of a string of choices.
I mean, it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury.
Poor management occurs. Sports fans are aware that injuries worsen if they are not allowed to recover. Not only did pushing her through back-to-back games, intense defensive focus and rapid road travel increase the likelihood of setbacks, but it also ensured them. Coaches have to be aware of her limited appearance. She groaned through minutes she shouldn't have recorded, her driving burst slowed, and her cuts came up short. Even though Clark pushed to play, the medical staff's role was to safeguard her, and they failed her.
Caitlin has worked so hard throughout this. With every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return. And her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioner's Cup title.
Consider the number of hours she claimed to be working in order to have a chance of getting back. Spending hours at the gym in an attempt to strengthen everything related to that injury, only to start over. Fans were inundated with rumors about when she would likely return, but it was clear in the locker room that her body wasn't reacting as it should have. The general population was being held responsible. Fans purchased tickets in the hopes of seeing Clark when stadiums promoted her road bouts. She was never even close to 100%. It hurts because there is a connection.
This is what Caitlin wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me in the Fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs.
Was her health a lower priority than revenue? It's difficult to see it in any other light. She was essential to the Fever's ability to fill arenas. No one applied the brakes as the danger flags began to flare because the WNBA depended on her to promote television numbers. Caitlin Clark did not suffer a freak accident as a result. After 13 games, she broke down due to a season-long string of poor decisions. And her professional year wasn't simply cut short by that slide. It immediately brought the league's financial momentum to a halt. Fans knew something wasn't right when Kathy Angelberg finally talked about Caitlin Clark's injury that ended her season. The league's commissioner was dealing with the largest player health crisis in recent memory. Her speech, however, sounded more like it was written by a corporate public relations team than it was by a leader who was genuinely considering the gravity of what had transpired. It was the epitome of sanitized, hazy optimism, with a slight hint to league expansion and no firm admission that the refereeing errors and lack of player protection contributed in any way to what spectators had just witnessed.
This is on your head, Kathy Engelbert, and the rest of the WNBA Players Association executive leadership who failed to hold officials and players accountable for the barbaric style of play the Fever and Caitlin Clark have had to endure this year. Kathy, resign.
What hurt was that distance. After bearing the burden of record ratings, Clark spent months on the injured list. Rather than listening to a commissioner state, "Yes, mistakes were made, and here's how we'll fix them," Angelbert made the decision to return to the same talking points regarding growth, sources of income, and productive communication. On a financial report, that would appear to be all right, but fans might notice the larger issue. Her own referees had been unable to stop the frequent physical targeting, and she just disregarded it instead of criticizing them or promising to hold them accountable.
A bunch of players and coaches over the last few days have complained without being fine-worthy about officiating. I just want to see about your thoughts on if officiating is an issue and how it can be improved, because clearly there seems to be problems or a disconnect between what players and coaches feel and what officials are actually calling.
When you consider how much Angelbert has emphasized league growth each time a camera is on her, it becomes even more offensive. While those referees were permitted to ignore their concerns as Clark took it all in, growth was built solely on her back. In May and June, she performed in crowded arenas. However, she was still more interested in discussing profits than accountability by August, when those same arenas were packed with irate fans demanding refunds. It seemed as though she was living in a different reality to supporters who had just poured their cash, effort, and hope into the season.
I know as a fan of sports for 60 years now, I know that, no one's ever happy with officiating. All sports deal with it, but we're working hard to make sure we're putting the best product out on the court, and our officiating then follows that.
The reaction was instantaneous. Even lifelong WNBA fans said on social media that the league didn't care about Clark's safety because of Angelbert's silence regarding referee responsibility. Words like treachery were used by some. Others took immediate action, providing evidence of canceled ticket orders and demanding refunds. Disappointment over Clark's injury evolved into animosity at the league's leadership. The commissioner had an opportunity to speak with supporters, acknowledge the officiating issue, and pledge future protection for every player. Rather, she spoke incoherently, which heightened the already simmering rage.
Play against Breanna Stewart, she goes to the line 14 times.
As a representation of a league where celebrity attraction is utilized as a marketing tool rather than being protected as a long-term investment, and where public relations is valued more highly than health. That insight has solidified into a movement. Boycott discussion is no longer idle chit-chat. It is planned, disseminated, and intended to reduce playoff attendance. Angelbert's meaningless remarks didn't make things any better. They intensified the flames, demonstrating that she was totally disconnected from the fundamental issues that were eroding her level of competence. And as soon as that disconnect took hold, it cleared the path for the impending panic into the bottom line of the league. The market collapsed with just one injury announcement. Overnight, All-Star tickets that were selling for over $200 in June fell to just $60, and resale websites were overrun with people looking to get rid of seats they had been eyeing for months. Nor was this an ordinary All-Star weekend. The league has marketed Clark City, Indiana, as her first opportunity to compete nationally at home. Within a few hours, the excitement vanished, leaving an event that felt abruptly empty. Fans were now requesting refunds after shelling out hefty sums of money, hoping to watch Clark compete in tournaments and be hailed as the league's face. It was more of a sense of having been burdened with daily labels than it was resentment over the money. However, those in the league were already aware that she had little prospect of coming back. Before the truth was revealed, It appeared more like the league was attempting to maximize every dollar than it did like poor luck. Long before the injury was reported, that desperation had already manifested itself. Because of Clark's name, the league had rescheduled several Indiana Fever Road games to larger venues, sold them out right away. By moving to NBA-sized venues, teams that typically played in front of 6,000 or 7,000 people were positioning the matchup as a major event. These same venues were now dealing with empty seats, irate spectators, and refund requests. Many folks didn't even hold out. As soon as Clark was ruled out, they promptly canceled or flipped their tickets, and the worry was evident in the resale values.
The ticket prices.
Furthermore, ticket prices weren't the only aspect of the financial consequences. In every city she wasn't playing in, attendance fell. Instant ratings drops were experienced by television networks that had staked hundreds of hours of prime time slots on her games. Sponsors who had committed to the Clark effect were now bound to games that were losing ground every week. The deterioration was not gradual. A quantifiable collapse revealed how much the WNBA's momentum depended on a single individual.
Could have easily said 2 months, 8 weeks, and that is why fans are so pissed off for the most part. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know if they were upfront and didn't BS us, people wouldn't be that angry at the organization, at least not as angry as they are now.
The rage turned to action. Online, there are calls to boycott playoff games. The fans promised to leave the stadia empty, and the hope of the previous months gave way to outright annoyance. The league's top star wasn't the only one gone. It was observing the precise business plan it had banked play out in public. And that brings up the following query. What does this bleak outlook for the near future portend for Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and the WNBA as a whole? Injury wasn't the only reason Caitlin Clark's season ended. It fell apart because the league wouldn't keep her safe. They betrayed the confidence of the very supporters who were holding them afloat in the process. The actual harm here is that hollow statements are not what fans want. Better officiating, accountability, and a commissioner who will defend players are what they desire. If that isn't done, the boycott will ruin the playoffs before they start. The fever isn't over yet. Every night, Kelsey Mitchell competes. Aaliyah Boston is becoming a more powerful city. Lexi Hall continues to work hard. Remember that Clark will return stronger in 2026. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below if you believe the WNBA is to blame for this mess. Turn on all notifications, like, and subscribe to ensure you don't miss anything. After you click the video on the screen, we'll talk in the next.